Well, good morning and good afternoon. My name is Thear Suzuki, and I'm very excited to be with you all today. And it's been great to see all the chat messages that have started. I would like to first of all wish each of you a very happy Asian Pacific American Heritage Month. Let me just adjust my screen real quick here. Yes, so thank you so much for being with us today. And as everyone is coming online, let us know where you're joining us from. Use the chat function to say hello, and also let us know your company name and your city. I'm seeing that we currently have about 432 people on, and we're expecting about 700 or over 700 actually. So we're expecting a very good showing. So please do join us in the chat. Wow, I'm seeing many popping up right now. So thank you so much for participating in that. I see Kimberly Clark. I see, oh my goodness, it's going by so quickly. I can't read it. Well, on behalf of our planning committee and our fellow Orchid Giving Circle sisters, I'm so honored to welcome you to our Power Leadership Forum. Can we get to the next slide, please? There we go. This is our planning committee. Again, we would like to welcome you. And I was thinking about saying to our inaugural Power Leadership Forum, but that's to be determined. But we're happy that you're here with us today. The recent rise in anti-Asian hate and violence has fueled us even more. And so we thank each of you for showing up today, not only to be in solidarity with one another, but also to invest in your growth. I remember attending my very first Asian American Women's Leadership Forum over 20 years ago. And I remember feeling right at home and wanting very much to become more brave and courageous like the women that I had heard from. Our forum today is created by Asian women for Asian women. So you're in the right place. And for those of you who are allies, we're happy that you're here with us as well. We're so grateful to many of you who have stepped forward to help sponsor and support this program. We recognize that it took a tremendous amount of effort for some of you to convince your organization on why a program like this is worth investing in. Let's take a look at the names of these organizations. You can see here on the slide in front of you, we have over 50 listed here, which is absolutely incredible. These are the organizations who are standing by us and giving us hope. We even had individuals who said, I want to do more for our Asian community. And they have personally stepped up with meaningful donations and sponsorships. Now let's take a look at the faces of the leaders representing these organizations. Many are with us today. We called on you and you answered. And so we thank you for doing that. Oftentimes we hear the question, where are all the Asian women leaders? Well, here they are, and today you will hear from them. These powerful leaders are making a difference across many industries, including professional services, healthcare, financial services, automotive and mobility, technology, retail and consumer products, higher education, construction, and insurance. It's just absolutely amazing to see all of these faces, and we are inspired by their leadership. There are three components to today's program. You will learn how to embrace your whole self, how to activate your superpowers, and how to ignite your community. I guarantee you don't want to miss any of this. So get comfortable, remove all distractions, and get ready to be inspired and learn. We will begin with a fireside chat with the one and only Anne Chow. And if you don't know Anne Chow and have not heard her speak, you're in for a treat. Then Lareina Yi, a senior partner and chief diversity and inclusion officer at McKinsey, will lead an engaging conversation with a group of leaders who were named by DCEO as one of the most powerful business leaders in North Texas. The third component is an interactive power circle created specifically for you to connect with one another, to discuss what you've learned, and also how you can apply what you've learned and heard today into your own lives. The power circle was designed for you, so I want to make sure that you don't miss that. All proceeds from this program will be granted to nonprofit organizations that provide much needed services to our Asian community. So at this point, we'd like to hear from one of them now.
Those closest to the pain should be closest to the power. We take young women to City Hall and also the state capitol to see the legislative process in action. Participants also select personally relevant bills related to women's equity, civic engagement, and voter participation. We then take them to Austin during the legislative session to meet with lawmakers about moving their bills forward. They share stories as to why those bills matter to them and the impact of those bills to their community. In 2019, our young women were advocating for House Bill 375, which would expand voting accessibility for college students all across Texas. Putting young women at the center of the policymaking process ignites and prepares them for a life of civic engagement and public service. Thanks to the support of Orchid Giving Circle, we're able to reach more AAPI women in North Texas.
For me, I think that the number one thing that Ignite has equipped me with is the confidence to put my name on any kind of ballot in the first place. So I grew up in Japan, and before Ignite, it was never a reality to me that I could one day be that elected official. So in college, I was really involved in student government. I ran for 3 different seats, and each time Ignite, my Ignite sisters were there with me every step of the way. Right now, I'm currently serving on the City of Irving's Planning and Zoning Commission. And this organization taught us the importance of getting involved in these local boards and commissions because they are political pipelines to get, more and more involved in our communities. And they're just such a good way to use our voice. So thanks to support from the Orchid Giving Circle and others, so many young women of color are using our voices to impact long-term change in our communities. So thank you so, so much.
Isn't that such an inspiring video? It underscores why this Power Leadership Forum is a passion project for many of us. We want to invest in our next generation of talent and give back to our Asian community. Today, we are so excited to have all of you with us today, and we're thrilled that we could have Anne Chow with us. Anne is CEO of AT&T Business. She's the first woman to hold this position. She's the first woman of color to garner a CEO title in AT&T history, and the highest ranking Asian American in the company. We're all so proud, Anne. Anne oversees more than 30,000 employees, serving 3 million business customers with the latest technology solutions. Her entity represented 25% of AT&T's earnings in the first half of 2020. Really very, very impressive. Anne has been recognized locally and nationally with numerous leadership awards, including being named to Fortune magazine's 10 most powerful women on your radar list. If this is the first time to hear Anne, get ready. She'll inspire you on your professional journey, regardless of your title or your position. She's a transformative executive, a self-described servant leader, a proud mother of 2 daughters, an author, and a strong community advocate that always looks for ways to give back. And we are so grateful that you could join us today. And now I'd like to pass it to Karen Ideno, Group Vice President for Sales and Marketing for Toyota Financial Services Private Labels, and Anna Hung, Chief of Staff for Accounting and Finance for Toyota. Karen and Anna had the pleasure of moderating today's fireside chat with Anne. Karen?
Thank you, Tracey, and welcome, Anne. What an honor to engage in this Power Leadership Conference with you today. So let's dive right in. The video we just saw really captured the essence of the Orchid Giving Circle, whose reach is more important than ever. Unfortunately, as we all know, this past year has been incredibly difficult for the Asian American community. Hate crimes against Asian Americans are up 169% in the first quarter of this year. So we'll start with this difficult and critically important topic. And as a female Asian American leader, what cultural values or superpowers do you consider to be important to help navigate times like these, to ensure that we can be our best authentic selves?
Well, first, Karen, thanks so much for that question. I will get to that in a moment. I just want to give a shout out to all of you and say special thanks to the Orchid Giving Circle here for having me here in this Power Friday, and for all of you for taking the time, and a shout out to the sponsors as well to support our community. Every person can make a difference, and each of you being engaged in organizations such as this really moves us forward together. Okay, so Karen, now, and thanks Tracey, by the way, for the shout out, and absolutely no pressure for this conversation here at all. Karen, you raised such an important point here, because I think one of the things that we have all learned and experienced over this last year, year and a half, and it is hard to believe that we are still amidst this, this global pandemic that has transformed and changed all of our lives, right? Whether you think about the professional dimensions of our lives or the personal dimension of our lives. What I believe so wholeheartedly is that one of the positive outcomes of what has transpired is our collective realization that the power of human connection is the most important. Bless you. I think somebody sneezed. But the power of human connection is what moves us forward, right? And is what inspires us, and it serves as the foundation for all progress. Now, to talk about this from the perspective of an Asian female, I think there are many things about being an Asian female that work to our advantage, quite frankly. I believe that if you were to ask me, hey, what has been some of the keys to my success, I think it all has to do with authenticity and really understanding who you are, who you are, what you want to become, and where you want to make an impact, right? And one of the unique things about working and living in a world of COVID is that we are now using technology in a way, right, to replace physical connection and physical proximity, right? And so, just as a simple example here, one of the stereotypes of Asian women that no doubt all 800 of us have experienced is that, we are demure and we are quiet, we are, slight in stature, and we do not have power, okay, right? Well, when you think about that in the sense of a physical presence in the office, yeah, some of us may be more petite or shorter, or, when people see us, they have a point of view about whether or not we command a presence. Well, in technology, as you can see here, right, we are all equal, right? We are equally human, right? Here in this case, we all have the same background as well, right, in terms of the virtual background. But this actually gives us an opportunity to level that playing field. Now, on the cross side of that, in terms of who we authentically are, using technology and being present in this way can also be a bit of a handicap, right? There is still this opportunity to not have our voices heard. We have to, and you all know how hard it is when you're on a video call like this, and if you have 10 people, 20 people, hundreds of people, how do you project and make your voice heard, right? And so, for us, I think we've got to lean on our inner core values, much of which lies in our cultural identity. It lies in our commitment to our community. It lies in our desire to serve and perform and achieve, right? And we have, I think, in many ways had to become even more agile, than others, because we've had to figure out how to make it work in this environment. And certainly from a female perspective, I think there's such burgeoning data that comes out, that is coming out and that will continue to come out that will show the long-term lasting negative effects that that this pandemic has had on women, right, as an entire category, right? Because we bear the responsibility disproportionately so for our households and for our families. And so to have that line be blurred, because many of us are working virtually at home, has put all kinds of pressures on us that we absolutely have to take care of ourselves. And that is not something, by the way, that we do very well. So.
I love that, Anne. Definitely the human connection. And you're speaking to the next part of my question that I have for you to address as well. So, right, you have identified the seismic impact of the pandemic and in the effect of women in the workforce, right? So McKinsey reports that 1 in 4 women are now considering leaving the workforce and downshifting to their careers, as you just pointed out. And it's really, while it's affected all women, it's also the working mothers and women in senior management. It's all of those the participants in our conference today, in our forum today, have been even affected even more. So we all know there's many reasons for this. And I'd like you to speak to this a little bit. So I know that a lot of women become discouraged in their jobs, especially to some of the points you made just a moment ago, especially if subject to unconscious bias. Mm-hmm. Because again, to your point, there's that model minority, there's the Asian female. So from different dynamics, we're trying to address it. And it's a lot for all of us to take in and understand, how do you show up? And so if you can go a little bit further with that in your perspectives on how to be an inclusive leader, and then share more advice on Asian female leaderships to help elevate their voices. And even when we return hybrid back into our more traditional workspaces, and how do you balance that going back into the office for some of us, as well as working remotely, and how do we interact to ensure we can get back in there and build up our confidence?
Okay. Wow, there's so many dimensions to that question. Okay, so let me try to take this piece by piece here, and Karen, I know you'll keep me honest if I miss a piece here. So first of all, let me just acknowledge that one of the things that each of us has to do as we're grappling with this period of time in our careers and in our lives is we do have to take care of ourselves. Okay, we have to admit that it has been hard, it is difficult. I am absolutely comfortable sharing with you guys that there have been moments in this last year and a half that I just felt so much incredible pressure. I mean, if I think about the first 90 days of the pandemic after it was declared, and working 7/24, serving my clients, worrying about all of my people all around the world, I mean, the pressures were really great. At my annual doctor's appointment, all of my numbers are bad. Okay, so the toll of what has just taken place on all of my numbers associated with my physical health have degraded, right? Because I'm doing exactly what my chronic New Year's resolution to eat less and move more, I'm doing the exact opposite, right? And so we all have to admit and understand and lean on each other so that we can talk truthfully about where each of us are, right? And I'm not suggesting we do that on a conference with hundreds of people, but for your trusted circle of connections, of relationships, it's important for you to let it out, okay? And admit that it has been hard. It has been hard for all of us, but in particular, it has been hard for us as women, as mothers, as wives, as partners, as by nature, in a normal environment, we take on more of the burden, more of the responsibility, whether it's the physical, practical responsibility in our homes, or that emotional. I mean, I would guess that probably majority of people in this audience, myself included, would say, yeah, you know what, I probably worry way too much about all kinds of things, including all the people that I care about, right? Like worry is a constant factor that you're sort of trying to grapple with, right? Okay, so how does unconscious bias kind of flow into this? Well, unconscious bias is very similar in the sense that if we don't actively talk about the fact that biases exist, all right, we will never be able to actually work through them, all right? So we as Asian women, you know, we sit at a very unique intersection of racism and sexism, all right? And you know, we have as a group, as a community, always been objectified, right, in American history. And I would bet, I won't say some of the crass things here on this call, but I would bet that many of the things that are running through my mind on when you have been catcalled, right, in any city, in a part of your neighborhood, even at a store you might go to, the kinds of things that we're subject to verbally are different than other women and other women of color, okay? And so when we think about those kinds of things and how they might even purport into the workplace, right? It is not uncommon for me, and I suspect 100% of you, to be asked, where are you from? What country are you from? Wow, you speak really good English, right? Okay, so you know, one of the pieces of advice that I would give all of you is, look, when most of the time when people are saying those things, they are not saying them to actually be racist, right? Even though they are racially insensitive comments, okay? They are doing them largely out of racial ignorance, right? And a lack of understanding of how those comments can be received inappropriately and how they make us feel like we don't belong or that we're the other or the silent ones, okay? So the way that I have chosen to deal with those kinds of situations is to, with a great deal of humor, address them head on. Whenever somebody asks me where I'm from, I take them through this entire rope-a-dope, right? Which then clearly makes it get to a point where, oh, you mean you're really getting at what my ethnicity is? Here is what my ethnicity is. And where are you really from? Right? You know, and I'll share with you, I was having a fireside chat within our company with one of the top executives of the firm, and he's a white male and, you know, hugely progressive. And when I was telling the story of where are you from and where are you really from and where are you really, really from, he actually paused for a moment and said, you know what? My parents are immigrants from Ireland, and I have never once gotten that question, right? And so my advice to all of you would be in this you know, context of unconscious bias is to seek each opportunity to educate the other person, right? When I first moved to Dallas, I'll share with you this story. I was riding in the car with a colleague of mine, you know, who was a white male, a wonderful colleague. And he said, hey, you know, I want to recommend these Oriental restaurants to you, right? And this is 6 years ago when we moved here, right? And I was like, oh, did you know that that word went out in the 90s and now it's kind of really kind of offensive, right? And here's why, right? And he's like, oh my gosh, I had no idea, right? And I said, well, the appropriate term is Asian, you know, Asian restaurants or what, right? And so had I just sat there and chosen to stew, he would keep saying it to his oblivion, right? And I knew him well enough to know that he wasn't being malicious, he just didn't know, right? And so I feel like on this topic of unconscious bias, we all own a part of helping each other be better, okay? And each one of us has biases. To have biases to be human, I mean, we all have them, by the way, okay? Ours are different than other people's. I mean, each of us has bias that is a reflection of how we were raised, the media that we watch, who we hang out with, right? All of the above, and it's a totally normal thing. But, you know, I happen to come from a place that believes that bias, unconscious bias actually sits at the root of so much strife in the world today, whether it's political strife, religious strife, you know, ethnic strife. And so I've actually made it a big part of my life's work to demystify and sort of normalize the ability to have the discussion about reframing bias, right? Not denying it, not suppressing it, but using it to move forward. From a leader perspective, you know, what I would ask of each of you to reflect on is, what is that bias in yourself, right? Are you even aware of what your biases are? What biases might you have of others? And I'm not even just talking from a gender perspective or a race perspective, right? We were on the pre-call to make sure that all of the logistics work about this, right? And we were kind of making some jokes about, okay, well, do you want to say that thing in front of a CFO? Do you want to say that in front of a marketing person, right? So what biases do you have about finance people or marketing people or salespeople or people from New Jersey like me, right? If you're an indigenous Texas person, right? We all have biases. And in order for us to be truly inclusive, the first place to start is to understand and start unpacking the biases that you have yourself about others, right? Because it is only when we can reframe our own biases that we can recognize them in other situations and constructively, grow and constructively get better. And so, that's kind of my view about Karen in terms of how to lead as a truly inclusive leader. You have to start with yourself, right? I mean, it gets to the root of ultimate authenticity, and you've got to confront some very difficult things. One I'll share with you, I'm a diehard East Coast person. I was born in the Midwest, but I grew up on the East Coast. So I am, all the way East Coast. It explains the rapid nature of my cadence, by the way, of my speech. When my company was bought by SBC 15 years into my career, and the headquarters moved from New Jersey to Texas, I said to myself, there's no way I'm moving there ever. Why? I had a bunch of conscious and unconscious bias about what that would mean for me and my family. All right. And never say never. We're here 6 years and we love it. Right. Circumstances changed. Were some of my biases true to my experience? Yeah. But were many of them absolutely wrong? Yeah, absolutely. Right. And the whole experience of now being part of the North Texas community has been one that has been so incredibly rewarding, right? On so many levels, personally, professionally, community-wise. And there's something very, very special about this community here, I can say, that is one of the reasons why I'm here with all of you guys here today. So.
Thank you, Anne. Love your stories. And a lot of us, and myself included, was nodding my head and acknowledging, because we have been in those experiences or situations where someone has made a comment. But I do appreciate the fact we should help to focus on ourselves, but also to help educate and be open to the conversation. So I love that. For our participants, I do want to call out, if you don't know, Anne, as Tracey mentioned earlier on, is a co-author of our Leader's Guide to Unconscious Bias, How to Reframe Bias, Cultivate Connection, and Create High-Performing Teams. Look at that. Love it. I recommend you check it out, because it's an Amazon #1 best-selling book. So I don't mind touting that, because Anne, it is such an honor to have you be a co-author, as well as get your thoughts and sharing them with us today. So she gave you a sneak peek of that with her unconscious bias ideas, but love for all of you to maybe take a look at the book, because it's so deep in a lot of things that Anne just spoke to. So Anna?
Yeah, and that was really great. I mean, what really stood out to me is your message of help each other be better, right? I think we all can recognize that each of us should look at ourselves in the mirror a lot of times. And so I love that feedback. I heard at AT&T that you actually are, you have a lot of Chowisms that you share your wisdoms. And one that I heard was, you be true, be you. And I think that really speaks to what you just spoke about, and just being authentic. So those two really stuck with me. For me, I have 2 young girls. I also have a career that I aspire to grow and stretch myself. You have 2 young daughters. Well, actually, no, they're not younger, right? They're in college now. They have right. 2, yeah. So you actually have 2 daughters. But when you were kind of in my shoe, in my phase in life, what did you use as your strategies to help you balance your choices? And those choices, particularly towards managing your energy towards advancement and opportunities. Because as you just said, we bear a lot of the burden, right? Our home and our work life is blurred a lot. I manage my kids' schedule really well, but I don't manage myself so well sometimes. So do you have any advice for that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you asked this question, because I will, I'm going to ask all the audience to pay attention to my answer here, okay? Because this, what Anna is asking here, is perhaps the most important aspect of anything that we'll talk about, right? So, so I'm gonna go through a couple of things, because this is also another, these are another set of Chowisms, and I want you to learn from my mistakes and failures and just on this. Okay, first of all, you have one life to live, okay? You don't have a professional life. You don't have a personal life. You have one life, okay? So I believe that this whole idea of balance is bogus, okay? And if we didn't have 100 people here, I would probably use a curse word, but I won't, right? I'm from Jersey, right? Okay, so this whole idea of balance is actually flawed. Why is that? So think about this. When you're perfectly balanced, and those of you who are perhaps a little bit more my age zone, you know, old Gen Xers, if you will, we used to have this scale in science class, right? And if you have this balance, right, and you used to have little like brass weights on both, to have that scale be in balance perfectly was a very delicate proposition, wasn't it? Right? Now think about your life, the personal dimensions of your life and the professional dimensions of your life. Oh my gosh, your kid gets sick and I'm cranking them with Tylenol, but it's not working to bring their fever in, so I can't send them to daycare. Okay, we've all done that, by the way, right? Okay. Oh my gosh, my boss says that he can't make a critical meeting, and I have to do it, but it's my time to take the kids, and what do? Or my gosh, my dad just called and my mom fell down the stairs and she's in the ER and I got to get to the ER, but I have an entire day of meetings planned. Okay. So life is not meant to be lived in balance. Okay. It is impossible. All right. So yeah, I'm sure all of you are like, oh my gosh, so now what? Okay. So here's the thing. Life is an optimization equation. All right. It is a little geeky, I know, right, as an engineer, but life is an optimization equation. What do I mean by that? It means that at any point in your life, at any stage of your life, you are looking to optimize to a set of success objectives that you are the only one who can define what those success objectives are. So, example, when I think about when I first started my career in my 20s, right? What was I optimizing to? I was optimizing to becoming financially independent, right? I was optimizing to my social network and my social having fun, okay, right? And life was pretty freaking simple back then, right? It was pretty selfish actually, but it was really simple, right? That's kind of what I was optimizing to, right? And I wanted to learn at work and I wanted to start building my career. I didn't really know what that meant, okay. Then I met somebody, got married. Oh man, now I got to optimize to him and us, right? And so then in my 30s, I was optimizing to, yeah, you know, my career was starting to really take off, but we wanted a family, okay? Had a couple of kids. That totally changes your world, right? And I'm not saying that you have to have kids to change your world, right? I mean, it's you know, it's Mother's Day weekend here, right? And so mom-like figures, you know, whether it's your support of the community, you know, your pets, your friends, whatever, right? You know, my personal characteristics of my life in my 30s were fundamentally different, and I was optimizing to a set of different things, right? Then in my 40s, my kids are a little bit older, they're a little bit more self-sufficient, but they are still home and I still need to be there, right? And one of the best pieces of advice that I got early in my career from a female executive was, look, Anne, you know, a lot of women make the mistakes thinking that their children need them when they're really little. They actually don't. They just need love, care, you know, the basic stuff. Somebody who cares about them, safety, love, food, you know, that. When they need their mother or they need their actual parents is when they start hitting junior high and high school, because that is when all the crazy stuff socially happens. That is when they get shaped as an adult, right? As you know, that is the trajectory that starts launching them into becoming a, you know, a contributing member of society, if you will, right? So, you know, in my 40s, I was trying to figure all that out, right? And then now I'm in my 50s. Now it's a whole set of different priorities now that my children are in college, right? So what's so important about this is to understand what your success measures are, okay? Because I believe you can have it all. You just can't have it all at the same time. That's all, okay? You can't have it all at the same time. but you can absolutely have it all in the context of your one life. Okay, now to the critical choice points of the worry, the burden, the responsibility, the pressure, and the stress. Okay, we beat ourselves up over the smallest of decisions. Okay, I cannot tell you the number of times that I tortured myself over, should I leave this meeting early? Do I miss dinner with the family? Do I take this business trip and miss that recital or miss that game? And I will tell you that I have not gotten it right in my life, right? I look back on it and I think about the choices that I made. And here is my kind of guidance to you on those choice points, all right? And I tried to follow them to the best of my ability. I would say I was probably 90% successful. When you're a working mom, or you're a mom, or you have multiple juggling priorities, or let's not even make this about children, but if it's about your parents, because we have such a responsibility to our parents and our elders, right? It is just in our DNA. I don't care if you're first generation, second generation, it's just in who we are, right? So whatever your set of responsibilities are that are outside of your professional responsibilities, okay, this is the struggle. So it was not about quantity of time, it is about quality of time, all right? So I knew, because my husband and I had made this decision that my career was the one that was accelerating. I loved my job much more than he did. He was going to be the one that was going to exit the workforce early and retire, right? And we were blessed that we could actually make that decision, as opposed to having two working parents, which was very difficult, by the way. Okay, very difficult to manage as we were both traveling. So then how do you manage what is quality? How do you decide what is the right thing to do? Okay, here's what I do. What is a no do-over moment? You know, when I was growing up, you know, we used to have this thing, you play kickball, play, you know, softball, whatever. Oh man, you whiff it. I want a do-over. Okay. So what is, which path is the no do-over moment? All right. And when I think about no do-over, it's either a no do-over to the people that it impacts, your loved ones, your friends, your family. Okay. And the obvious things are graduations, critical recitals, the championship game, not every freaking game, right? I was never that good. Okay. Right. And whether it would be something that the people impacted would remember forever that you didn't make it, or that you would remember forever that you didn't make it, right? This is about having as few regrets as you possibly can in your life. That's a no do-over moment. Nobody can tell you what a no do-over moment is for you. You have to decide. I'll give you one of mine that I use as a very common example. On the East Coast, it's called back to school night. I think here in Texas, it's called curriculum night, right? It is the one time of the year that all the parents are invited into the school, and you get to walk your kid's schedule. You get to meet all the teachers, the principal of the school, right? For me, this is a no do-over moment. Why? Because it could literally be the only time in my child's entire school year that I step foot in the school. I'm embarrassed to say that, but it's true, okay? It is the only time where I get a frame of reference of what their year is going to be like, that I can somehow relate to, even though I travel 70% of the time and I'm not home, right? That I can have some semblance of context so that I'm not completely outside of what is so important for them to go through, okay? I also, right, as the consummate sales professional, for me, it was important to shake the hand of that principal, shake the hand of that, pre-COVID, of course, shake the hand of the teacher, right? Because I know that that teacher is making an assessment. All right, when did two parents show up? When did one parent show up? And by the way, if I needed them later, I wanted to be able to say, I met you on curriculum night and I need help with this for my child, right? Again, relationships matter. And while I know they would never remember me as mass of, you know, thousands of parents, it was at least a moment of connection that I knew I could fall back on because I had actually met them and could say that I actually met them, right? So it was kind of a relationship safety net that way. So for me, that night for both my children is a no do-over moment. Now, did I make every single one? No, I made about 90% of them, okay? And I really tortured myself for the years that I missed certain ones. But I did 90%, pretty good, right? Pretty good. maybe not an A in Asian culture, but pretty good, right? Okay. So, so understanding your no do-over moments is so critical. Okay. So if you take nothing else away from this conversation, right? Part of the way you build your power, part of the way you understand and identify and really embrace your authentic self is to know what your strengths are, to know what your priorities are, to know what success means for you, and to really guide yourself in your decision making on what is most important. What are you optimizing to? And know that you say you know what you want 10 years from now. Don't even worry about that. Okay. Like think about like a 5-year horizon, maybe, right? 10 years from now, who the heck knows, right? I mean, after this world that we've just gone through, right? This year we've just gone through, you cannot predict the future, right? So don't be so far out ahead that you're missing what's happening today and what's right in front of you. Okay. And so, so Anna, I know that was a really long answer, but super important. Again, for me, I feel this is the most important aspect of how we become our best, most authentic, most powerful selves, and we live our lives to the fullest.
And I don't know about you and the people in the audience, but I got goosebumps the entire time. And especially the no do-over moments. I think you're right. It's absolutely the only thing that we can set our legacy for our kids, for our family. If you want to tear up.
Oh yeah, yeah. And yeah, because this is also a professional audience. Let me just add one thing, because this one is super, super critical. Okay, because we women, we make this mistake all the time. I have made this mistake before, and I don't want you guys to make the same mistake, right? Yeah. We tend to share a lot. We like to talk and share a lot. Okay, so I'm going to use that curriculum night example with you guys. I had a critical presentation to the board of directors one year. Okay. And it was not like you get to present to the board of directors all the time, right? I mean, it's a unique career opportunity, and it conflicted with curriculum night. I tortured myself like you would not believe, right? And then I realized, you know what? If I choose the board meeting without asking if it could be moved, I will regret it, right? My kids were at an age where I was like, I really didn't want to miss curriculum night. It was a really important set of years for them. So I said, I have an immovable personal conflict. Is it possible that I could be scheduled for the next board meeting? Okay. Now, what do you think would have happened if I said, I have back to school night and I need to go to that instead of the board meeting, right? Do you think I would have been judged? Yeah, of course I would have, right? They would have been like, really? Come on, Anne, you're not committed to the company. All right. So my message, my coaching, my advice to you on this: one, nobody can tell you what your no do-over moments are. Only you can. Two, nobody needs to know what they are. Okay, right? You know, and I tell this story in the book, to which, by the way, I get zero proceeds. So it's not like I'm hawking the book to hawk the book. Okay, but of meeting with a group of CIOs, and both men and women, and we were having this discussion about women in the workplace. And this very contemporary CIO said, man, I've had some amazing women on my team over the years, but then they get married and they have babies. Okay. By the way, this is not 30 years ago. This is not that long ago. Okay. And then my head's like blowing up. Right. And I wanted to have this, right. So I dove into the conversation constructively, and I wanted to understand why. And he said, well, it's because, when women get married and they have the babies, they always have to leave early. They always have to leave early to go do these things. Right. And I'm thinking to myself, you know what? The problem is some of the men are actually leaving early. Some of the men actually want to leave early, or they do it. They just don't tell you what it's for. Right. The women are the ones who are saying, I got to go pick up my kids. I got to go to the soccer game. Nobody's business. Nobody's business. Okay. So please don't make that mistake. I mean, I learned the hard way, that I would be judged. It gets to the biases, right? I mean, that exist in the system, and there's no reason to feed them unnecessarily, because it's nobody's business to know what is the most important thing to you in your life at that time, right? Yeah. But if you don't ask, you don't know, right? And so I tell you that story about that board meeting because I reflect on that, and it was a turning point for me to even develop more courage and realize that, my gosh, that was easy, right? It was so easy, right? Yeah. But I tortured myself literally for a month over it, until I got the courage to try to, to handle it in a different way. So with a positive outcome. So.
Wow, Anne, thank you so much. I mean,
Mhm.
very, very, very honest, authentic, powerful insight. And I'm gonna take this with me. And I know a lot of people, I see a lot of comments in the chat. I see everyone is hearing you. So thank you. Karen, I'm gonna turn this over. I know we're almost close to time, so.
Yeah, so let's get this two questions. One, Anne, that we wanted to, with our theme around, and I love this part of the conversation, we could have had hours of conversations based on just that engaging insights from you that you just shared with all of us. Really quick, can you give us some sense of, right, like AT&T and Toyota have resource groups, right, employee resource groups that can bring people together with common backgrounds or interests. And we want to understand this can be a truly important avenue to build powerful relationships, to meet others for mentorship, to evolve potentially to sponsorship, and they can be ultimately personally fulfilling opportunities. Think about when we talk about paying it forward and lifting up other women in their careers or supporting the community through voluntary events or activities. Can you give us a quick glimpse into how you suggest the Asian female Americans in this audience earlier in their careers can start doing this now to give back and ignite their involvement in the community? And what does that mean? If you can just encapsulate that, that would be fantastic. Thanks, Anne.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to. Okay, so first of all, there's an immense amount of science out there that says that we are not truly happy unless we're helping others. Okay, and I would offer to you that us as Asian women, this is even more true, right? It's even more in our DNA, right? It's also one of the reasons why we tend not to think of ourselves, because we want to serve others, we want to support others, we want everybody to be happy and successful, and we forget about ourselves, right? And then we realize something's missing. Okay, so with that, and there, again, there's tons of data out there. There's a book that I'll mention to you that I thought for me early in my career really helped me understand that, and it's called The Only Way to Win. It's by Jim Lair. That's one resource for you, right? Another one that I would have you think about as well is to this topic is by Clayton Christensen, How Will You Measure Your Life? Okay, because it really reinforces some of these themes. So knowing that satisfaction comes from helping others, employee groups and other networks outside of your day job give you an opportunity to get exposed to lots of other kinds of people. All right. And to the extent too, look, let's face it, it's not like there's tons of Asian women, in our companies who are leaders or role models. I mean, we are at the low end of the tail of the percentages, right? In power, whether it's in politics or, in for-profit, in the public sector or nonprofit, whatever, right? So to the extent that you are looking for fulfillment and networks and support in other areas, let's say, with the Orchid group, or with one of the employee groups in your company, join those, right? Join those to build camaraderie. Join those to expose yourself to other people, to find common ground and common interests, right? And Karen, I am a one who also believes that that can be a great avenue to just growth, right? I just got an email yesterday from somebody who is about to celebrate. This is incredible. Their 50-year service anniversary this year, right? And she was reflecting on her 50 years, and she said, I'm so thankful for the work that we've done together in Inspiration, which is the Asian business resource group here at AT&T. She's like, because I would have never met you, right? And we would have never connected. And we have become colleagues over the years through our work through that network. Right now, I'm not her mentor, right? I'm not her sponsor. We've never worked together in our day jobs, but we have a relationship, right? And she's an amazing human being, right? And we would have never met, right? And so your life will become more enriched as you meet more people and you find and establish meaningful relationships, right? And I just feel like the more you put yourself out there, and again, this is counter to us, right? Many of us are introverts. Believe it or not, I'm actually an introvert. I'm probably now an ambivert, but most of my life I was an introvert, okay? And so it's not like, I don't really like it, right? I don't really like cocktail parties. I don't really like any of that kind of stuff, but you gotta do it, right? And what's actually beautiful about now, right, in this virtual environment it's actually much easier. You don't actually have to drive anywhere, right? Hey, you mind hopping on a 15-minute Zoom with me and let's just get to know each other, right? How about like a Zoom coffee break or something like that, right? So so many of those barriers or discomfort of having to go somewhere or burn a bunch of time have actually been removed, right? So I would encourage every single one of you to do that early and often. I mean, for me, I didn't start picking my head up until I was in my 30s, right? In my 20s, I already admitted to you, I was hugely very selfish, okay, right? I didn't know I was being selfish. I was just like optimizing to my own life, right? And then I looked up and I was like, holy cow, I've made it to middle management. I'm one of so few Asian females that my community expects something from me. And by the way, I have a responsibility to my community to get out there more and to help lift up others, right? Because as much as I don't mind being the first, I don't want to be the only, and I certainly don't want to be the last, okay? And that has driven me this entire time, because I know it'll make the world, the more diverse we are, the more, the more different points of view we have across all of our teams in every facet of society, the better off our country will be, the better off the world will be, right? So so I'd encourage all of you to get involved, right? And hey, don't worry about if you join something and you don't like it, it's okay. Don't stick with it. Try something else, right? It's just like anything else in your life, right? If you're in a job and you don't like it, learn as much as you can as you're planting seeds to move on to the next one. Don't give up, right? If you join an organization and you're not like jiving with the people, then okay, you know what? You tried something and move on to something else, right? And don't stay within the confines of women only or Asian only as well, right? Part of my greatest growth has been when I've pushed myself to become part of an organization that focuses on the Black community, right? Put myself in an organization that focuses on a generation that's younger than mine, right? Because I want to learn and I want to grow, right? I mean, it is this constant give and take, if you will, as is anything that's constructive and forward moving in your life. And so I'm a huge believer in getting involved, in that it is a two-way street kind of thing, but don't feel like you have to stick with something if you're just not feeling it, right? Try something different.
Yeah, and that is perfect. To your point, it's even diversification in the community, right? So ignite your community effort, but also diversify in how you show up and where you show up. That's so fantastic. As a national trustee of the Boys and Girls Club that I'm heavily involved in over many years, I can completely understand that, wanting to lift the youth and the bright future for tomorrow. So thank you. So spot on. So Anne, I wish we could go on with this conversation. As I mentioned earlier, you're such a powerful inspiration, truly, truly amazing. Anna and I would like to thank you on behalf of the Power Leadership Committee for joining us today and sharing your Chowisms and personal reflections. The life is an optimization equation that is not going to leave my framework of thinking from this point moving forward. I know with this high group of potential Asian female leaders, you've really sparked and activated their mindsets. I know it'll help them navigate and increase their exposure and experience as Asian female leaders. So such a pleasure. Thank you, Anne. We thank you so much for your time, your treasures, and giving us today your time.
Yep, no, it's my pleasure. And if you guys want to, feel free to follow me on Twitter or hit me up on LinkedIn. Just note that this is kind of where we came together, and I'd be happy to connect with you. Okay, thanks.
Perfect, Anne. You'll have many of us taking you up on it. Thanks, Anne.
Okay, thank you.
Now, to kick off our exciting panel discussion with powerful industry leaders, I have the honor to introduce our wonderful moderator, Lareina Yee. Lareina is the senior partner and McKinsey's Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer. Lareina, I'll hand it over to you. Thank you.
Fabulous. Just great. Thank you. Just starting the video. What an amazing and energizing, it's one of those moments where you get the kind of real talk that we all need to thrive in the workplace. That was so fantastic. And we also just have a great panel set up here, and it's going to be a great session. So a couple of things. I mean, I was just thinking about what Anne was sharing and teeing off our panel. I mean, she talked about leaning in on each other and this power of admitting vulnerability. But you listen to Anne, and as she shared vulnerability, actually she grew stronger and more fierce, I think, in all of our eyes. And so it's one of those incredible things where when you share and when you admit your vulnerability, you actually command more power. And that, you know, just so much. One of the things that she talked about was bias. And for me, when I think about bias, I think about the impact of microaggressions. And we think about Asian Americans and Asian women specifically. And, you know, I love the question because it happens all the time. Where are you from? Where are you really from? Another microaggression, which is one of my top 5 sort of favorites that come back and forth, is being mistaken for someone substantially younger than your title would suggest, just because you're an Asian woman, or that you're of a petite stature, assuming that you're very young, which actually takes away from your credibility and your power. So just so much for all of us to think about. As Karen mentioned, I'm a senior partner at McKinsey & Company. I'm based out of San Francisco, and I'm also our Global Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer. And what a year in terms of having that role for the firm and for society when we think about the start of the year in terms of how the pandemic affected working mothers in particular, and most acutely, as Karen and Anna mentioned, our research that we've been doing over the last decade was a bit of a stunner this year, because what we found is that 1 in 4 women are thinking about downshifting or leaving the workplace. And when we take a look at working mothers, that's 1 in 3. And we had never seen potential attrition of women and men diverge until this very year. And so when we say we're at a crossroads, when we say it's like so important to come together and lift each other up, it really is, because we can't afford to lose all of the talented women here and across the economy. So a bit of, it has been a crazy year, especially also then at the back half of the year as we tackled Asian hate crimes in full force. And what that has meant in terms of Asian Americans speaking up and supporting each other in ways where a lot of people said, this is the first time I've actually done this. This is the first time I've actually used my voice in a different way. It's the first time that I've shared how incredibly scared I am just to walk down the streets of San Francisco or New York or Chicago. So it's just been a tremendous year, and everyone's a fighter and brings enormous spirit to this. And with that, let me introduce 2 incredible women that I just met this week. Maylee Ortiz, who's the managing counsel at Toyota, and also Charmaine Tang, who is a senior client strategist at BYN Mellon. And we are so lucky to have them. And to put you guys on the spot in terms of a question, Anne talked about balancing young children. I mean, oh my gosh, that back to school story, I was like, of course, I feel that every single fall with my 3 kids. I know both of you have young kids and are managing all of that. But let's take it from the kind of overall sense of stress and pressure to what has it felt like this year in particular? This year, being a working mom, a powerhouse executive, as well as trying to take care of young kids. And tell us some of the strategies, because all of us are actually still in this COVID world. So we'd love to learn from what you have done. Let me turn it to May first.
Yeah, thanks so much. Just for context, I have a 3-year-old boy and a 5-year-old girl. And Olivia's home with me today because she's sick. So talk about balancing, right? But I would say first and foremost, and if I can lean into perhaps a truth among us as Asian American women, professional women, we want to do it all. To Anne Chow's point, we can't do it all at the same time. So my first tip is really be real about what actually has to get done today. I think we tend to be overachievers. We tend to be like, oh, let's just squeeze one more call or squeeze one more email or squeeze, scheduling another appointment or something like that, which leads us into that big word we don't like, failure, and feeling that we fail as a mom and we fail as an employee or whatever, roles we have because we didn't get everything on that to-do list. And I know this sounds so simplistic, but it's been very freeing to just say, you know what? I don't have to do laundry today. My house is a mess. No one's seeing it anyway. We're in a freaking pandemic, right? Like letting some of that go and being really clear about what do I have to get done and what's the most important. And then my second tip real quick. And then I think Anne Chow also alluded to this about how we don't take care of ourselves. It really is so important to fill up your cup because that saying goes, you can't pour from an empty cup, right? And so that's going to look different for each of you. But for me, I got a therapist. I had to talk to someone about, how do I deal with all the things? It means I work out at the end of my last call and before I pick up the kids, because those endorphins help me be a better mom, and that's just one of those non-negotiables. To Anne's point, I'm sorry, I can't make that meeting. That's immovable, right? And no one needs to know that it's because I need to work out so that I can be there for my kids. So just a couple of tips. Hopefully that's helpful.
Great. I was just going to add to May's comments. So I have slightly older kids, house of teenagers practically. I'm a mom of a 14-year-old boy and a 12-year-old girl. And, the first 90 days, as Anne alluded, I think my blood pressure went up too. And frankly, we were just blocking and tackling. But what it did shed light to me for, my husband, I'd like to say he's an equal partner, but the reality is that sort of a lot of the mental load fell more on me. But I think in our household, for the first time ever, we were both staying put in the house. And I really leveraged that. So I would just say, think hard about prioritizing and delegating more aggressively, right? Trying to work hard to sharing those responsibilities. The other thing I thought my family and I actually really found comfort in was routine. And I think what that was great. Everyone says routine, 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 but in a time of chaos, it actually was really our guiding light. And I would tie into that, the ability to really be intentional about it, right? What is important in the routine? Are the things you're doing, meaningful, right? We were all hunkered down and realized, wow, it really simplified it. It made time slow down. And as we re-enter the world, it's really important to think about that. From a professional and personal standpoint, everything May brought up and Anne actually brought up resonated. I actually used staying connected as a mantra. In the digital world, I could be more in touch with my mentors from New York. I grew up in New York too, and I'm a fast talker, but I've slowed it down because I've been in North Texas for 12 years. But, I reached out to a mentor of mine who's now 72 years old in Greenwich, Connecticut. And he was instrumental, right? Just a few Zooms. And I mentioned I was interested in serving in boards. And he said, let me introduce you to people. And we did all of this on Zoom. And so I think thinking about leveraging digital while getting back into the regular world, that's a good tip for us from time management. And then the last but not least, for those of you, as your kids grow up, what you're going to find is there going to be lots of tugging at your time, right? Sports and dance and games and tournaments, right? We slowed down. We had family dinner every night. And I have to say, we have been really, really focused on keeping that time of day sacred wherever we can. So anyway, my bottom line for all of you, I would say my biggest learning is being intentional with my time, being unapologetic and saying no to things that truly aren't a priority. And I think you focus on the quality of the time and you'll be amazed at how much more efficient you become.
Amazing. As my 6-year-old would say, I think everyone would say we feel a connection. They do this in their circle time to what you're saying. And we can all see ourselves in, Charmaine, what you describe. I mean, the joy of family dinners and actually having less activities. And, creating the priorities in May, I think we all need that discipline of exercise. If people aren't doing it, I feel like that's going to be like a go-to for tomorrow morning for everyone. Just like go get that done, because you also have to take care of yourself. How will you possibly take care of others when you have so many responsibilities? I probably should have also mentioned, I have the 6-year-old who has this. I have a 14-year-old and an 18-year-old. So we did college admissions, high school admissions, and kindergarten this year.
Wow.
And
Brutal.
so like all of you,
Good job.
Just good job to all the moms, right? It's just, and Mother's Day is coming up on Sunday. And you're just sort of like, I read an article where they're like, I think you just can say you want some time by yourself. But and it's been a completely tough year. One of the things, just to add a couple of the contextual facts here, is that when we say that there's a lot of housework, that's a real number. So just to kind of help people dimensionalize, when May's saying that she cuts it off her meeting, she goes to work out, and then she has the kids. On average, women in the United States have about 15 hours of additional household duties on top of their full-time job. Best I can tell, that's a job and a half. Asian women, of all women, have the largest, or reported they have the largest percentage of household duties. And not only did they say they had the most household duties over COVID, which maybe means they're, they actually are taking on more, there's less sharing of the slack. We don't know, but they have the most. They also said that 15% of them or 14% of them were saying that the increased load of household duties was the number one reason why they were thinking about stepping back from the workplace. So it's not about the capability to be an amazing executive or amazing manager. It is actually the burden of this year has been so real. And we know for women overall, they feel incredibly uncomfortable sharing this in their workplace. We're all sharing it as if we're all good friends here. But in the workplace, the reason why people feel tentative to share it is because they're worried that it's going to have an impact, a negative impact on their performance reviews. Back to what Anne said about the biases and how this all plays out. So, one thing is if, you're imagining that some of this is happening, maybe understand that it actually is a form of empowerment, and that there are amazing women like May and Charmaine who are making it work day to day. And we definitely can do it. Which leads me to two more amazing friends, new friends that I met this week, who I'd love to introduce you to. We have Lisa Ong, who is the president and founder of Wishing Out Loud. What a great name. And Sakina Foster, who is a partner at Haynes and Boone's. And the question for both of you as we continue this is, you have had both unbelievable journeys. But when you're in that, if you reflect back being in that mid part of your career, especially the tension potentially of having young kids at home, working through, you're not Anne Chow yet, you're not who you two are. Tell us about the strategies that have helped you the most.
Thanks, Lareina. I'm an executive coach and diversity strategist, and I named my company Wishing Out Loud because I discovered over the years that one of the things I struggled with was asking for help. And as I listened to everything that everyone's talked about, one of the early strategies that I learned was if I invest in relationships and let people know that I need their advice, just like the wonderful advice we're hearing today, I'm able to get more done, right? And so similar to what Anne said, if I'm very strategic in managing my moments, but more importantly, investing in relationships, that has really helped me to accelerate my career, because it's not just me alone, it's how I develop others and what I'm known for. And when you have a network, people are like, how do you get so much done? It's not me, it's who I know. And more people, when you invest in that relationship and you call and ask for that help, they're more than happy to step forward. And so Wishing Out Loud is simply asking for what you need to do your best, getting out of your own way of overthinking it and using those relationships. Because what I had to reframe in my head was when I wish out loud in multiple choice, it gives other people the power to grant the wish. And we all love to help one another in that human connection that we're talking about. So that would be my big strategy. Aha, was not just focus on the task, but focus on the relationships. Sakina, what are your thoughts?
Thanks, Lisa. Those strategies are great. I wholeheartedly agree with you that investing in relationships is a key to success. And I'd add two additional strategies that I've learned, things that I wish I could go back and tell myself. And the first one is to use failure as an opportunity for learning and for growth, and not a reason to beat myself up or give up. We're all inevitably going to have setbacks and make mistakes. And right now, even if you imagine the person that you respect the most in your workplace or professionally, or a rock star in your industry that you want to emulate, whether you know it or not, that person has also faced failure. They've had setbacks. And I bet if you asked them about the failures and setbacks, they'd say that that's what taught them more than their successes taught them. I know that's true for me. And so for me, I had to learn that failure isn't what counts. It's what I do with that failure. And I needed to be able to learn from it and say, okay, I've made a mistake. Instead of getting into a shame spiral about it, what am I going to learn from it? What can I do differently next time that's in my control to make sure that I get something out of this that's positive and try not to repeat it? And then just pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and move into action. And I'd say my second tip would be, and this really aligns with what Anne had shared and May and Charmaine, which is to strategically use your energy. And we're all high achievers in this room. And it's normal for us to want to say yes to everything. And especially early in my career, I wanted to be helpful. I wanted to improve my skills. I wanted the stretch assignments. And I realized that there comes a time when I had to learn to strategically manage my energy, and that saying no to something is actually saying yes to my energy, and to being able to conserve it for opportunities that actually align with my goals. So now I have a rule that before I say yes to an invitation, whether it's to join a new organization or help with a nonprofit initiative, I have to pause, and during that pause really ask myself, does this align with my goals and values? What else have I committed to? Do I really have the time to do this in addition to everything else I have on my plate, even if it's something I'm passionate about? And when I'm not sure, going back to Lisa's point on building those relationships, I seek out those colleagues and mentors and peers that I trust and talk it out with them. And oftentimes it's, I really want to say yes to this, but I know I don't have time. And they'll be able to help me reflect back and come up with the right decision.
That's great advice. I see everyone in the chat is like taking note. If there was, multiple thumbs up, all of that seems to resonate. Such great advice. Our third speed panel, as we keep moving on, is I'm so delighted to introduce Tracey Doi, who is the CFO of Toyota, and Thear Suzuki, who is a senior client partner at EY. And the question to pose to the two of you is, we've heard about unbelievable strategies about how to thrive and how to survive in this tough time. But this year, with all the hate crimes against Asians, all the anti-Asian rhetoric, really brought together what all of us have been experiencing for our lifetime and catalyzed it into a moment that was incredibly visual, a moment that was incredibly hurtful, not just for what we saw on the screens, but for what we've experienced in our whole lives. And so question to you is, both of you are leading communities that bring people together to create power. Tell us about the power of being in a community and how we think about future leadership and how we empower those who will walk our footsteps. Let me start with you, Tracey.
Lareina, great question. I mean, during this challenging time for the Asian community, I think it's just important to know that each of our voices matter and that we can all be involved in the community. It's open to leaders at every level. You don't need to wait, because I think growing up, I thought community involvement meant you needed to wait till you're at an executive level. No, your voice matters at every level. And I'd love to give you an example. In response to the rise in violence against Asians, Trang Pham, who is our co-chair for Toyota's Asian ERG called TASIA, made a really huge impact. Trang and the TASIA team hosted some really valuable listening sessions, giving an opportunity for team members to share their perspectives during this difficult time. One team member shared how she's worried about her mother just going to the grocery store, worried about her safety. A father spoke about the difficulty of how do you explain to his 7-year-old son why he was being bullied. And another team member shared how she's feeling really isolated during this, watching on TV all the difficult anti-Asian hate crimes. So by organizing this listening session, I have to tell you, it was a real turning point to give allies a chance to listen, to learn and support. And Toyota has since increased our support for the Asian community by $1 million and also recommitted to the development of our Asian team members. So I really show that as an example how Trang's voice made a really powerful difference. And it inspires me. And I really want to encourage all of you to think about, you could either be involved in your company's employee resource group, you could volunteer as part of your child's school, you could volunteer as a family, because I know everybody's feeling so busy. You could volunteer as a family through your church. And it will also give you the benefit in your career journey to practice new tools in a really safe environment. How to do public speaking, how to organize an event. And really, as you mentor and lead others, you might find that you're adding to your own personal board of directors. And I know Thear loves the community and gives every single day. Thear, do you want to add?
I would, Tracey. Thank you so much. That is such a good example in terms of what can be done within the company. I would just like to share, one important life lesson that I've learned over my 25 plus year career, and it's very similar to what Anne shared actually, and that is I've learned that we only have one life. And I know that sounds so obvious, but I used to have what I thought was a clear separation between my personal life and my work life. But in reality, what was ending up happening was that my work life was dominating every aspect of my life. I was working long hours and weekends, and when I wasn't at work, I was thinking about work and wasn't really able to be present with my family. And those of you who know me know that I have 4 boys, so it's a full house. So while I had always had a strong desire to also get involved in the community and give back, it was really hard for me to do so, to juggle everything. And like Anne said, when I got married and started having children, it got even harder. But fortunately for me, in my experience, I had an opportunity to participate in a women's leadership development program, as well as had the opportunity to work with a coach that really helped me to become more self-aware. And I learned what I needed to do in order to make shifts in my life so that I could be more fulfilled in my life. And so I started getting more engaged with professional organizations because I have a passion for leadership. I also started to partner with nonprofit organizations on programs that I was, helping to put together and helping to host. And those steps that I took led to nonprofit board service, which is so fulfilling for me to be able to make an impact through those opportunities. So today I serve on a number of nonprofit organizations, and I won't go into them now, but they add a lot of value and a lot of meaning to my life, while also giving me the opportunity to be able to help others. So in summary, Tracey and Lareina, I've found a way to integrate my business life with my passion for helping others. So I describe it as, doing community work for me is my golf course. And I believe that our world is changing so fast. And I think that successful leaders, particularly in the 21st century, are people who are both leaders in their profession as well as leaders in their community. And they want to play a role in helping others, both in small and big ways. And in doing so, they're not only helping to improve other people's lives, but they're also becoming happier and more fulfilled themselves. And so I would highly encourage everyone to kind of figure out what will work for you. I think you're on mute, Lareina.
I said, what an amazing story. And I think someone chatted in servant leadership. And then somebody else just emphasized that. I think that really captures your story. And Tracey, hearing the raw voices of emotion, I mean, that's just incredibly powerful. And it brings it home so quick. And it means so much when we have senior leaders opening up to hear that and sharing their own fears. And it also is so important because a lot of our colleagues don't understand. They don't understand what it's like to walk a day, a month, a week in the shoes of an Asian American. And so, perhaps all they see is the positive stereotypes, and it's actually quite helpful to hear what it really feels like and what it takes and what the fears are in our community. And, in a world where maybe some of us grew up in a cultural household where you weren't supposed to talk about weaknesses. That was not something that you were supposed to do. You were supposed to kind of be tough and move on. But if there's ever a time we need each other, it's now. So it's incredibly powerful. And Tracey, you and I have talked before, and just one thing I wanted to share, because I get this question quite a lot as we're transitioning into the breakouts, is we're all leaders. And several people have talked about this, that whether you're an early level manager with 2 or 3 people, or whether you're the CEO, whether you're the CFO, you are a leader already. And so the question is, what can companies do to support and advance Asian Americans. And maybe just a couple thoughts to leave folks with. The first thing is, I think it kind of comes back to math and numbers. So if it's measured, it will be understood. And all too often, companies aren't measuring from entry level to mid-level to senior level the percentage of Asian American representation. And within that, they're not looking at Asian men versus Asian women. And we actually know in all of our years of research that those numbers of representation, as well as their experiences, are distinct. And so when you get under the numbers, knowledge is power. And oftentimes we see pretty good representation at the beginning, very little representation at the top.
Yeah.
And having the numbers gives you the power to put that on the table as something to be solved in your respective companies. So that's one. Secondly, is we've talked a lot about it, so I won't go into it too much, but it is how unconscious bias plays a role. And in particular, plays a role in performance evaluations and reviews. And so all of us here have seats at the table when other Asian women are being reviewed, and calling out bias and speaking truth to power when it happens is essential. And of course, it would be better if there was a total environment where that worked. But in case it's not working, we have to speak out, speak up at that moment. Another piece is around fostering sponsorship. And so it's linked to the piece, Tracy, that you were nodding about in Thear, is that we lose a lot of women, a lot of Asian women in that mid-tenure to senior level group. And so how do we actually reach down earlier to sponsor and actually corral other leaders with power, white men, Black men, other white women? How do we get allies to come in and sponsor Asian women to succeed and have a better understanding of the experience of Asian women? And then the last one is, because we talked about the way that COVID affected Asian women and men in particular, with greater household responsibilities, greater home responsibilities, the tension that we feel to create balance where there's no balance. How does the workplace have the policies to drive flexibility and support? So those are just a couple of things to say, look, it's great to share, it's great to vocalize your experience, but we have power. So how do we use that power to change the day-to-day experience of the companies that we're a part of? Because we're also change makers. So with that, I would love to turn it over to Nina Newberry, who's going to take us into some small groups. The panelists today have all been so amazing, so honest and raw. I hope that all of you took a lot from that. And it is the perfect segue, Nina, to go into groups to explore our experiences further. So with that, Nina, thank you.
All right, thank you, Lareina. There is so much I could say about everything that we've heard today, but I am going to reserve that for the power circles that we're about to go into. But first of all, I just wanted to say that I am just truly thrilled to be part of this whole process with you all, especially being on the board of Texas Women's Foundation and being an Orchid Giving Circle member. I've had a passion for helping women be successful for years. In fact, I worked at Deloitte Consulting for 14 years and got involved in our women's initiative all the way back in 1993. And then 13 years ago, started my own company, Newberry Executive Solutions, to really focus on my passion. And it also led me to develop the New Lens app, which I'll talk about in a minute. But first, I'd like to share a little bit about the power circles and specifically the connection to why we're here today. So our forum today is about embracing your whole self, activating your superpowers, and igniting your community. And so the power circles are intended to take this beyond today. So we are going to talk through some of this today, but also extending it. And the circles are intended for Asian American women with 5 to 15 years of work experience. And it's a mechanism to not only help you all develop your networks across organizations and industries, but also really being able to tap into some peer coaching, helping each other with idea sharing, as well as benefiting from the mentors that are part of the power circles, but ultimately helping you develop strategies that will help you in the workplace. So each of our power circles, you could go to the next slide, please. Each of our power circles are hosted by our sponsors. And you saw the incredible list of sponsors that we have here. And we have mentors from those sponsor organizations as well as from the Orchid Giving Circle. And as a Diamond sponsor, I am totally thrilled to be able to provide the New Lens app as content for what we'll be discussing. So you'll see a couple of the topics there. Actually, a lot of what we talked about today, both in terms of recognizing your values, your strengths, how you're showing up, as well as how do you manage your energy, your capacity, distractions, balancing, or I should say integrating personal and professional demands and making sure that you are thinking about what's most important to you. And so these power circles are available to VIP guests and $300 ticket holders. And we have 2 additional power circles beyond today. So June the 4th and July the 23rd. And so I would like to give a huge shout out to our mentors who are dedicating their time. So these are 90-minute power circles, and we'll end up discussing some of the content from the New Lens app, and I'm sure we'll be sharing other ideas as well. Go to the next slide, please. So we have, I did want to give a huge shout out to the mentors because we've got so many that we couldn't fit them all on one screen. So you can see the companies that are represented here, the industries that are represented here. So, and this is such a unique opportunity for you to be able to engage with these individuals and really learn from their wisdom, as well as be able to share ideas and do some problem solving and brainstorming in your groups. I just want to wrap up this segment by just talking a little bit about what's next for the Power Circles. For those of you who are will be participating in the Power Circles, we will be emailing you instructions on how to access the New Lens app. And so a lot of these topics that we've been talking about today are actually covered in the app. And so I think you'll find a lot of connection between some of the things that we've discussed. If you have any issues getting into the app, feel free to reach out to me directly. There's also technical support available through the app. And then please mark your calendars for the next 2 Power Circles, which are on June the 4th and July 23rd. You can see the dates there, but you'll be able to use the content in the app between now and the end of July. So anyway, we'll be sending you instructions. And with that, I am going to hand it over to Thear to wrap up for us today.
Thank you, Nina. And it was really great to hear all of the takeaways and the things that resonated with you all. Thank you for your engagement and for chiming in during this segment. And thank you, Nina, and everybody else for pivoting and shifting when we needed to do that. Man, that was pretty seamless. I'm very impressed. So as we bring this session to a close, one of the reasons why we've come together is to ignite our community and to help raise funds to support the Asian community. We'd like to show a quick video from one of our past grantees, that's from APIA Scholars, so that you can hear a little bit of the impact that we can have together.
My name is Mina and I'm an APIA scholar. I would like to give a big thank you to the Orchid Giving Circle. As a daughter coming from a lower class family, to say applying for college was difficult would be an understatement. I always knew that I wanted to major in biology and later on attend medical school to become a physician. However, I needed to plan to go to college before I could even plan on going to medical school. And thankfully, with the Orchid Giving Circle, I'm now able to do so. This scholarship has not only given me educational help, but it's also given me numerous opportunities otherwise. They've given me help with my financial needs, such as my textbooks and my other school supplies, but they've also given me the chance to meet with other people and network with people with the same experiences I did. I just want to thank the Orchid Giving Circle for giving me this unique experience and the community that comes along with it. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Katrina Breeze, and I'm Vice President of Development and External Affairs at APIA Scholars. APIA Scholars is the nation's largest nonprofit organization dedicated to the higher education needs of our Asian and Pacific Islander American students. Together, with the support of the Orchid Giving Circle, This upcoming year, we will be so excited to award 4 new scholarships to deserving Asian women in the Dallas, Texas area. We know it's through your support that they will be able to achieve their dream of a college education. Thank you so much to the Orchid Giving Circle for your continued support and for your tireless fundraising efforts during this unprecedented year. Thank you to the Texas Women's Foundation for gathering us here today, and congratulations to my fellow grantees. We are so excited to be celebrating here with you today.
I love that APIA Scholars is one of our grantees because I myself was able to get a college education through scholarships. So as we've mentioned in the past, 100% of the net proceeds from today's event will go towards funding much needed programs and services. There are many ways to give to the community. As we have talked about, you can give of your time, of your skills, and of your treasures. At this time, I would like to humbly ask that you consider making a meaningful donation to support Orchid's effort. A wise person, she's on the phone or on this call, once told me that no money, no mission, and she is so right. So you can simply text 41444 and the keyword Orchid to make the donation. We need to raise another $60,000 to be able to fully fund the grant requests that have come in for this year. So please consider making a donation. It could be in any amount that you're able. You know, if let's say we have 350 people on this Zoom call right now, if each one of you made a $100 donation today, that will get us halfway towards meeting our remaining goal. This is your opportunity to help us get closer to our goal and also to making a difference. So right now, I'd like for us to just roll a quick video on Orchid and the work that we do within Orchid. Thank you very much to each of you who've donated. I saw some of the messages coming through the chat. A heartfelt thank you to each of you. It will really help us to help fund some of these nonprofit organizations who are doing amazing work. So as we bring our time together to a close, there are 2 actions I'd like to ask that you consider taking. The first, let's stay connected, and you can do so by joining a newly formed LinkedIn group called Power Leadership for Asian American Women. That's Power Leadership for Asian American Women on LinkedIn. Please consider joining. I'm your administrator, and so I look forward to admitting you into the group. Second, share your participation at this event on social media and use the hashtag Power Leadership Forum and the hashtag Orchid Giving Circle to help us spread the word about the work that we're doing here together. I want to thank again our wonderful sponsors, our community partners, and our Power Leadership Committee members, as well as our Power mentors and donors for your engagement over the past few months, and especially today. I would like to end with my favorite quote to live by. And this is a quote by Winston Churchill. You make a living by what you get. You make a life by what you give. Thank you to each of you for investing your time with us and for giving of your treasures. We hope to see you again. On behalf of our planning committee, have a wonderful and blessed Mother's Day weekend. Thank you very much for joining us.